Hi, my name is Erica Carter, and I'm juror today. Today is the case of Jennifer versus the AU Hospital. The reason for this case is because her medical information was released to an unknown source without the proper paperwork or the subpoena for her paperwork. The hospital originally called and left messages on her answer machine, but never directly got a hold of her. They did not go through the proper channels to try to get her or try to see what kind of paperwork they had. Without the proper connections, without the proper paperwork, the release of the information was not allowed. So when Jennifer went into the hospital, she was under the assumption that everything was supposed to be kept between doctor-patient privileges. And that also falls under the HIPAA Privacy Act, which people can get in trouble for violating. It pretty much states that if you don't have a legal parent or guardian and you're underage, your legal parent or guardian is the one that's allowed to obtain your medical records. Underneath the HIPAA privacy, it states that with all the information being released, they could get in a lot of trouble. And that's why Jennifer is having an issue. Because instead of them going through the proper channels to find her or to make sure that the request was legitimate. So the biggest problem was that the hospital had failed Jennifer in many ways. First, by releasing her information to somebody that they didn't really know. And two, by not having the proper paperwork. Now, we're looking at to see if reasonable efforts have actually been made when it came to Jennifer. And from what Jennifer is stating in her statement, that she did not receive any hard evidence that they had reached out to her. It was all left on voicemail, which one is also a violation on top of giving her, when they called her, they left the information on her voicemail, not knowing who was at the house and if her medical proceedings was something that she wanted talked about. So if they left all this information on her voicemail, anybody could have listened to the answering machine and heard her personal information, which in itself is a violation. The hospital goes on to say that they tried to get a hold of her and that they left messages, which there it states that is why they are in the wrong. They left a message on her voicemail where anybody in the house could have heard it. The hospital states that they did not violate her rights, but they really did. So when you look at a paper to release medical information, unless it was subpoenaed by a judge, you need the person's first, last name, date of birth, social security number, and the reason you're requesting this information. None of which were stated on that release. It was not a proper release form. So when the hospital first obtained this release request, they should have automatically, a doctor and a hospital has to have the patient sign a medical release consent form and a written authorization with her name on it in order to share medical information such as life insurance or anything else that pertains to her personally. And they did not have this. So another thing that they should have asked Jennifer was who is authorized to have her medical information. So when they got this request form, if it did not have, under the HIPAA rules, if they did not have Jennifer's signature on it stating that she was allowed to have release, that it is a violation immediate. So some common scenarios which the hospital violated is telling friends or relatives about it, which they did when the message was left on her answer machine, and also giving away her medical information. So all in all, I side with Jennifer as it stands. I believe the hospital should be sued and does owe her whatever she asked for because they violated something very personal. And if there was something she didn't talk to her family about, or she wasn't ready to discuss with her family, or if somebody was trying to build a case up against her and they didn't have the proper stuff, they just gave them everything they needed to pretty much go against her wishes. My advice to the hospital and to the hospital staff is in the future, Go over HIPAA violations with your staff to avoid this type of problems again. And or a patient, if you're going to be a patient in the hospital in the future, go over your rights as a patient. Make sure you read what you are signing, and make sure that if somebody calls, leave very specific directions about who is allowed to have your stuff. Once again, I'm siding with Jennifer against the AU hospital.